Mindfulness is bringing your attention to your breath, and when your mind wanders, bring it back. And that's actually not even mindfulness defined by the Buddhist tradition. That's shamatha. That's the first preliminary to mindfulness. Mindfulness is the next move to pull back, to open up and observe what was the subject now becomes an object or a part of you that's being observed by a type of mindful awareness.
Okay, welcome everybody. I am tremendously excited and really happy to be sitting with Loch Kelly. Loch is, I would say, a mentor of mine, someone that I've been really lucky enough to work with as a student on his retreats, and his work deeply informed my work to this date. And let me tell you a little bit about Loch. He's an author, a meditation teacher, a licensed psychotherapist, and he's the founder of the non-profit, the Effortless Mindfulness Institute. So all of this leads towards his work, which combines contemporary psychology, ancient wisdom from a mindfulness perspective, and contemporary and neuroscience. So all of this comes together in his work centered around what he calls effortless mindfulness. And so let's begin in the most simple place possible, which is right here and now. If we teleported us both back to 21 years old, into our original consciousness at university or wherever we were at that time, operating in our ordinary mind, what is that kind of awareness, or what is that state of consciousness relative to mindfulness and then relative to effortless mindfulness? Can you describe the kind of progression that one might experience?
Yes, thank you, Jeremy. It's so great to be here with you, and always a pleasure. So yes, here we go. Transporting back. so 21 years old. Yeah. So very much, focused on waking up. What do I got to do? What classes do I have to go to? What happened last night? What's going on? Worries or concerns, problem solving. Is there a problem I have to do? Is there something to avoid? Is there something to get today? Who do I want to talk to? So very, very personality driven, very, animal driven in a normal sense, just, getting food, what's for breakfast, where am I going to get lunch? Who am I, social part of the human. Who am I going to hang out with and have some fun with during the day? And what sport? So I played sports. So like, is there a game today or practice or, getting there and getting ready to do that. So, strong, physical, animal, instinctual, social, and then the mental tends to be this contracted me. So there's nothing wrong with most of what's going on there at 21 or even now in terms of, craving food, wanting to get it, making it mine, those, getting, wanting, desiring of functional dimensions of our consciousness and life in terms of our identity related to a particular body in the world that has to survive and thrive. However, the extra thing is that the mental development from being a dependent child who just was more instinctual and then had to develop this functional, okay, I've got to go out on my own and know what a green light and a red light, whether to cross the street and be safe, which is good. But then thought-based, I think, therefore I am, referential, self-referential, identity, contracted, mental me starts to be the feeling of, okay, I can function with this identity, but it keeps looping on itself and it keeps judging itself. It splits off into good and bad and right and wrong and what's wrong with me, and then I feel hurt emotionally by peers or situations that and then there's a part of me that feels less than, and then another part that, well, get it together, or whatever the judgment or the functional protector parts or the manager system stays very contracted, and there's either some anxiety or kind of overwhelm of depression or low level feeling of less than or not good enough that tends to dominate the emotional body. So
sounds it sounds very familiar to me. My 20s were definitely full of angst and self-judgment and all the things like that. A lot of self-referential thought. And as he's described, a lot of parts in dialogue with each other. I'm good at this. I'm bad at this. Why am I so terrible at this? A lot of self-judgment. And I'm really trapped within a kind of an architecture of thoughts thinking about other thoughts.
Yes.
Hard work.
And and these parts which have not just thought, because that's one of the things about bringing, sometimes the mindfulness can just focus on thoughts as if we're only thought, but there are emotions and identities that create what we're calling subpersonalities or parts, or that have thought, feeling, sensation, worldview, identity. So it's not just the thinking that's the problem. It's this identification with this constellation of a small self or an ego identity, to talk in a very common way.
That's good.
And
keep going. Yeah. So we've identified, as you say, these. Can you give me the exact term you used to describe, rather than just the mind, the whole part in all of its density?
So there's the dimensions of consciousness: physical, emotional, mental, instinctual, and then these patterns of survival or identity. And so now we're going to move to, okay, how do we move? Ultimately, what is the option? What is the solution, or is there a way to learn to upgrade this system of identity and mind, or is there a way to actually continue, in my sense, to have a human developmental stage that is common and available that we just don't know about? But if we know what it is and can learn, like we grow from, not knowing how to read to learning how to read, or maybe even, having the innate ability to have language. So there's an innate ability to awaken or to access or to move this sense of beingness or awake consciousness or true nature or higher self, or all these words that are imperfect to describe what this next identity is. So this mindfulness, what I call the mindfulness move, often is described, first level is to calm that system. So yoga does that. So there's many ways to calm it, and many people find that through exercise, through singing, music, right? Through watching their breath, through yoga, through sauna, through taking a nap, anything to calm the system is called shamatha, or peaceful abiding, calm abiding. And often the traditional way in Buddhist mindfulness is to use a one-pointed focus on your breath. Basically, you're giving your mind a simple task, because the mind tends to wander and get complex and identify with automatic thoughts that keep going. An automatic thought just says, okay, whatever's happening, just give it a simple task, and the breath is happening by itself. So just be aware of that. Then when it wanders, bring it back. So that's one way. I don't think that is necessarily, certainly it's not the only way, and I don't think it's necessarily the best way for people. I think people need to find, but it is important because the system, when it's agitated and running like a hamster on a treadmill toward survival and thriving, it's hard to shift into the next level of identity and mind if you don't have some calm. So some way of calming, and there's many ways we could explore. And I kind of, in like my meditation app, I give different ways to calm the system, and many people already have good ways that they can use. So that's the first kind of mindful stage.
Yeah, exactly. So that first mindfulness stage, and it's often the one that people land on first, is this thing of sitting and meditating. In general, most people that I encounter, or many people that I encounter, will report struggling with meditation and feeling like failures. You know, there's this sense of trying to bring the mind back. And of course, the mind does what it does, is it leaps away and wants to get solving problems. And that feels like a failure every time they loop into mind. And so often the mindfulness project is abandoned at this particular place. And I think that's one of the joys of your work, is that it offers, I think, the potential to sidestep the potential grind of a lifetime sitting on a mat trying to bring your awareness to your heart or to your breathing and feeling like a failure. There's something else, right? There's another alternative.
Yes. Yeah, and that's very well said, Jeremy, in terms of, you know, how many people give up what is the first preliminary stage of meditation. They can't even get to the next few because they're told, well, you have to walk through this door. And the door is one point at attention, which is basically concentration, which ultimately is not what you'll be using later on. And in fact, you're actually reinforcing the ego's strengthening attempt to do something that ultimately it's already pretty good at, in a general sense of like driving and stuff, but it's not even an advantage to become a great concentrator, because once you upgrade, you're actually focused from this effortless flow, and everything's able to focus from this bigger awareness-based embodied presence, which is completely different than concentration.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. So we're going to chat a little bit later about some of the effects of what we're describing in the realms of communication, but you're describing a shift from the first kind of form of meditation, which has its place, but involves a lot of effort and ultimately control from within parts of us that are already potentially too in control. Does that describe it? And there's another thing where you relinquish control and you learn how to exist, communicate, be from a place of naturalness where one's relinquished that form of control. And then you use that word flow, and we'll come into that as we get into that section. I want to hold us a little bit in this narrow range, if you don't mind.
Let's stay. We'll keep climbing the ladder of mindfulness here.
Exactly. Okay, so there is this effortful mindfulness, which many people have struggled with. Many people have also experienced goodness within it. Where is effortful mindfulness good? So it does, as similar to exercise, doing something like singing or an activity like gardening, or something where you're focused on one task and you're not keep getting lost in thought, or dominated by the chattering mind because you're doing a simple task, or you're working with your breath in a way that allows it to be natural. There's a calming effect. And it helps the brain, and the research has been done that it generally is good, but it's more toward a calming, and it calms the symptoms. However,
what you end up doing is you're getting a temporary calm, like taking a sauna or getting a massage. An hour later or a day later, you're back again, or half a day later, you have to do it again to get the symptoms, because the root cause hasn't been addressed. Mm-hmm. So the next move, so if you, as you say, when you look up even Google or, use AI to ChatGPT to ask, what is mindfulness? I mean, you'll often get, mindfulness is bringing your attention to your breath, and when your mind wanders, bring it back. And that's actually not even mindfulness defined by the Buddhist tradition. That's shamatha. That's the first preliminary to mindfulness. Mindfulness is the next move, which actually is an amazing move, which is somehow to shift from that thought-based concentrator that's focused on trying to watch that simple task and do that, and to step out, to pull back, to open up and observe what was the subject now becomes an object or a part of you that's being observed by a type of mindful awareness. So then you can see, oh, wait a minute, I'm focusing here on my breath. Then you just follow the back. Instead of focusing on your breath, you move up, and then you realize, oh, wait a minute, who's focusing on the breath? And then you feel, people can feel it from a certain dimension. They often don't even think about where they're feeling it from. That's the next move. But all of a sudden you can watch your thoughts. You can feel that the one that was concentrating isn't solid, and that it is changing contents, which is why it was wandering. The reason the mind was wandering is because there is no solid, consistent self that is a stable thing. So it keeps showing itself as like, constellation and patterning, so that you can actually see that. And when you realize, kind of these classic things, oh, I'm not my thoughts. Mm. Oh, I'm not the one who's worried and anxious. I'm aware of the part of me that's worried. Mm. And the part of me that's aware is not worried and is not thought-based, but it's knowing. Mm. So that, hopefully people at least can get to that, although, yeah, so I'll just stop there and see if you want to say something.
That's beautiful. I think it definitely, it's worth a pause. So it is this extraordinary experience of being completely identified with the ongoing narrative in one's mind, and then discovering, or rather experiencing, that a part of us is always aware, listening to that narration going on. And when, for example, when we find ourselves looking at a view and perhaps not narrating thoughts to it, we are capable of just being aware, independent of thought. And so our sense of self, instead of being, I am all these thoughts and these problems that I think about, is a sense of self, or at least our experience starts to shift into this wider view, which is, I'm simply this awareness, and my awareness includes thoughts and sensations and so on. My awareness, I'll just use that loosely. Yeah, back to you. Just don't know if you want to clarify on what I said there.
Yeah, and you've even, because you do go further, you even went half a step further, because when people go to just that mindfulness, they don't even think, oh, I'm the awareness. The arrow's still pointing here. So they're even not even concerned with what this is. They're like, oh, look at the thoughts. Sensations are coming and going. Thoughts are coming and going. Feelings are coming and going. Oh, I'm not. There's a, the classic Buddhist words are anicca, which means change. Things are constantly changing. And anatta. Oh, that's not, that self is not solid. There's not a solid self. So it's still like toward it's a disembodied observer that's focused on the contents of consciousness and seeing it through a lens, almost like you move from glasses to, a microscope. But you still think you're looking through the microscope. You're and you do see who you're not. So the insight is to who you're not, but not yet. Okay, well, if I'm not that, what's the new operating system? So often, and there's the research by one of my colleagues, Willoughby Britton, who did a research on people during their first 5-day retreats in this style of just deconstructing and seeing who you're not meditation. And she said 40% of the people got flooded by their unconscious material. Wow. Because when you take away the ego, you take away the ego defenses. So you take away the protectors, and then the unconscious material, you don't have yet the who is the one who all of this is occurring to has not upgraded yet. So this becomes kind of a big important step of why effortless mindfulness introduces as soon as possible, okay, if you're not this, let's go find out who or what you are that can bear what seems to be unbearable, can be with and is already has the capacity to be with and titrate feelings, thoughts, or be big enough so that any storm doesn't hurt the ocean or the sky.
Beautiful. Yeah, it reminds me of, Ram Dass, is the late great Ram Dass's book, Be Here Now. And of course, it sounds so simple. Surely we're all just being here now. But I think you're pointing to something with effortless mindfulness, a potential to kind of cut through something very quickly. So can you describe a little bit about the process of how you cut through? And perhaps we should do a glimpse now, the how, and also where are we pointing through to?
Yes. So that move, we've calmed the system in whatever way helps. But if we went by this one-pointed concentration, and then we follow that flashlight type of attention that is focused on object, we follow it back. Well, wait a minute, where's the flashlight? Oh, can I be aware of the flashlight? Now we're in this floodlight or this street light. We're above and we're looking at the flashlight identity from this streetlight identity. Now what we're going to do is there's a couple different ways, but we were like, well, wait a minute, or this microscope identity. Who's behind the microscope? Let's go look. And as the awareness turns back and looks through, it doesn't find a point of view. It finds an open, hopefully spacious, but also pervasive. So one of the metaphors would be like, okay, you feel like you're a solid individual, then you feel a little more change in content. So now you're like a cloud, but it's a storm cloud still, and you're aware of it, and you're trying to clean it up with positive intentions, and even in that system, like training the mind to be more equanimity and loving kindness, but then it keeps being some strong. So here we're like, okay, let's step out of the cloud and realize we're the sky. Now, like, rest as the sky. And don't look back yet, just rest as the sky. Now come back and don't even just look at the cloud, but realize, oh, wait a minute, we're not other than the cloud. We're within the cloud, and the cloud is made of the same dimension of consciousness. It's just patterning from, there's some water there. There's in the cloud. There's like oxygen, but also then hydrogen comes together. And now we got H2O, and now we got, and so it's all invisible potential, and then it becomes formations, invisible, humidity, then water, then it can be even ice if you want to use that, but solid. And they're not separate. So all of a sudden you start to realize, okay, there's this dimension of consciousness that isn't thought-based, looking from behind the eyes, but it isn't disembodied like a mindful witness, and it isn't separate. So there's a, the word non-dual means there's kind of, you're not just awareness, the awareness and the aliveness, the emptiness and the form are not two. There's a multi-dimensional feeling, but this move, the next move we're talking about from that mindful witness to opening to feel this awareness that is clear and knowing, invisible, and can't be hurt, that has no fear, no worry, no agenda, and yet is with and within that which has agenda or worry or fear, and so you can get caught in what's called a spiritual bypass. Some of the non-dual initial moves, people get caught in this, like, oh, I'm just the awareness and I'm free and there's nobody here named Loch. There's just awareness and things just happen and everything else is a movie. And, that's non-dual. And I'm like, well, but there's dual. There's what's the movie, what's the relationship? So what's the relationship to this from this? So that's the next kind of Buddhist, they call it, you call it non-dual presence rather than just non-dual awareness, or you can call it, in the Mahamudra Buddhist tradition, they call it same taste. The awareness and the aliveness, they have the same taste. They're not it's not oneness, but they're not separate. They're interdependent. And that's the embodied beingness that has shifted from the small self that's worried about how to solve a problem to this whole holistic feeling of being.
Sounds beautiful. Yeah, I'm going to try describe that as a thought experiment for our listeners, and we'll see if this lands as an accurate description of what you've said. I might be talking about a slightly different stage, but I just would invite everyone to consider what it would be like, or let me slow down here, to consider what it would be like to sit in this moment relatively free of thoughts, where they're just aware of their surroundings, fully available, feeling the sensations of the body. Emotions could pass through, thoughts maybe could pass through, but there was this sense of presence, a kind of even a knowing that you were present, a real awakeness to it rather than being lost in the minutiae of thought. And this kind of spacious but embodied awareness would have a sense of capacity to it and calm, and emotion could arise from within it, but the awareness itself just feels incredibly safe to exist as, to be in, to be within. I'm just exploring it. How did that feel? Any corrections or adjustments to that?
Yeah, no, that's a great, we'll call that, sometimes you say a thought experiment, and it could be a sense of what's called pointers. So a pointer is using language to just point a person. All right, can you notice that you're not just thought, but there's awareness that's aware of the thought? And people may go into their head and think about it, then they won't get it. But there's ways of helping people move. And of course, just to say that there is this gap that some people have, these protective parts that just quickly turn back. So these parts that feel like I want to be solid and real and survive and, be seen, when they unhook or let go or open, they're like, oh no, here we go, watch out, and they snap back. So we have to, that kind of giving the premise, okay, like you did, That's or the hypothesis. Okay, this is a hypothesis that if you let go and discover this openness, you're going to come back, and everything's going to be included. Nothing's being left, but you need to go. You know, it's like a kid is a little scared. Just let it know. I'm just going to the kitchen to get some food. I'll be right back, and then see if that isn't more holistic. So maybe I can do an inquiry here.
Let's do that. Yes,
To kind of follow on your hypothesis. You're kind of setting it up. So that's the premise, that this thought-based system is just operating on, half of its capacity of physical, mental, emotional, survival brain, which is not, we're not getting rid of that. We're just upgrading it like you would if you were a Tai Chi master. You'd still physically safe, but now you do it with calm, and flow. So the main thing that is the scanning for danger dimension of what's called the negativity bias in the brain, where the past worst case scenarios are being projected and scanned for in the future. Is there any danger? And so we're in the past, and then we're scanning into the future, and we're overlaying that. So but basically it's trying to look for any problem and solve a problem. Is there, if there's a pain in your foot, is there a knife there? Do I need to quick go check? Look at your foot. Is there, your knee? What's that? Check that. Oh, is it okay? Oh, I don't know. And then anything moves, or somebody's face kind of looks, you're like, oh, are they upset at me? Or is there something I need to do? Did I forget anything? So it's looking for a problem in the world, in the future, in the past. So if that problem solver wasn't front and center, wasn't sitting behind your eyes looking out, but it could be here, but just for now, in these next few minutes, you can look around. Is there anything dangerous in the room? Could you let that problem solver just soften back and open to the potential that there's another effortless awareness already here? So the inquiry is this. So what's here now? What's this that's aware just now when there's no problem to solve? So just noticing that problem solver and just inviting it, thanking it for its hard work, asking it to rest back or down, and then just being curious when that thought-based scanning dimension is not primary. What's this that is simply aware? So just feel, not think, but feel what's this that's here, that's invisible and yet alert. And then just see if you can shift to not only being aware of this alert awareness, but what's it like to rest as this? And as you rest as this and begin to be aware from this, just notice as this awareness, what's the relationship to movement, vibration, energy, sensation, thoughts, feelings, your body, and the room, if they're not separate. So what if everything was welcome and included from this non-thought-based, open, spacious, pervasive, invisible beingness or interbeing or non-thought-based clarity but it has dynamism. So thoughts are welcome, feelings are welcome, but you're just not needing to analyze, or there's a capacity to know that all is well and be with any parts that feel uncomfortable, pleasant or unpleasant, without having to react, but just to welcome and have this kind of knowing that's inherent within whatever's happening and is almost with it. How do you feel toward whatever's arising from kind of a loving awareness? To see if there's kind of a compassionate, welcoming feeling from here as well, so that it's embodied and isn't as reactive, but is able to move your hand. If you could move your hand from here, lift it and put it down. And then you could also intentionally use thought, like remember your phone number. And then just like your hand, you can put intentional thought down. And just still be clear and aware, and you could respond from here.
So lovely. Immediately a sense of peace, or accessing a sense of peace. And I've shared versions of this because I know Loch has taught this for a long time, versions of it. And I've shared it with my classes. And the very first thing people access often is a sense of peace or calm, and it's really quick. And I think this, and of course they start accessing senses of awareness or clarity or presence. And I'm curious, because of this really quick cutting through, can you describe a little bit about what direct path means, or what these glimpses are, and what they can offer us living in our modern society with our phones and our terribly hijacked awareness?
Yes. Yeah. So this is the premise, or the hypothesis, that the meaning of effortless mindfulness is not that you make no effort. It's that when you make a small effort, like this glimpse or this shift, that you discover that there already is naturally installed within all of us this kind of effortless awareness that doesn't require concentration, but is alert and is the primary dimension prior to thought. So before babies learned thought, there was this beingness or this awareness that, but it gets covered over. And so it's kind of just a background, foreground shift. And it's just been, we've just been so involved and habitually trained to look to thought, to emotion, and try to function. And we don't know that there's a higher capacity that's inherent within. So it's not creating anything. It's not an altered state. It's not a meditation state. It's actually what's called the natural condition, or the nature of mind, that the mind isn't thought-based. That's one of its functions, but its nature is awareness. And then it can move your hand, it can use thought, and that in Buddhism, thinking is considered the sixth sense. So just like our five senses that we all know, thinking is just a sense occurring to what or whom? Awareness. And then used by what or whom? Awake consciousness, beingness, self with a capital S in Hinduism, and in this, internal family systems, they use this self, a small self, and then this large self, or Thich Nhat Hanh calls it interbeing, and other cultures, whatever you want to call that. It's not about a belief system. This is really almost like going in a scientific way and using these as little experiments to say, like, all right, can you shift from this thought-based operating system to this awareness-based, and doesn't it include everything? Yes or no? I'm not telling you what to do. I'm inviting you to look. So that's called a pointer. So it's a direct invitation, or pointer, to have the person look for themselves, not say, okay, imagine a beach, or imagine, or become happy, or even what they call there's relative loving kindness and ultimate loving kindness. So relative, imagine, sending loving kindness. So that's a meditation state. So this, when you discover this, it's like, okay, let go of conditioning and see what's here. And then all of a sudden, it's not a negative thing that we feel like we've been defending against this unconscious material, that even deeper or subtler, really, than the unconscious hurt or trauma or anything, subtler and wider and more primary, is this loving awareness that then can be with the trauma or the hurt parts much more easily, because even there's no matter how smart or developed your ego is, it can't bear a fully emotional life. It can't handle trauma. It can't handle, but your awareness-based identity can. So it's almost a natural, immediate recognition, or it's called a recognition or realization. But then the habit is very strong of the old system. So it's not, instant enlightenment or instant coffee. It's not like that. It requires, so this way that I have found and was taught to me is called small glimpses, repeated consistently. And then there's always awakeness is always here, but then there's always unfolding, and there's a healing, and there's a kind of almost like a developmental stage. You kind of recognize you have the capacity. Now you have to take it on the road and try it out and learn and make mistakes and get triggered back to the old system, and you learn to return, and then you train to remain, and over time it becomes the new normal.
Yeah, it's got to be a revolution in human experience. I remember that I'm told Maslow's hierarchy at or for most of time ended at self-actualization. In other words, I must become the best me possible. I must actualize me. And then, towards the end of his life, he then added on a new top of the triangle, which was self-transcendence. And I know you wrote in Shift into Freedom, you got deeply into this notion of emancipating oneself from the self, which, and I really want to say this to everyone who's listening, nothing that Loch is saying is conceptual whatsoever. Everything he's describing is actually very simple human experience. In fact, and it's really a shift from a kind of a very complex human experience, really wedded to thought and emotion as a very believable and very complete experience, into something much cleaner. We still retain those emotions and thoughts, but they're held or in a much wider view. And it's a really beautiful shift. And in spite of all the metaphors or the pointers as Loch is sharing, ultimately what he's sharing, the experience is incredibly simple, right?
Yes. I mean, the simple, that initial shift, like we did with that what's here now when there's no problem to solve glimpse, like I have hundreds of those for different learning styles, in audio on my app or written, because there's just little places people can get caught or defended. However, the initial recognition is actually not a deep experience. It's not even an advanced experience in terms of it's right here. It's like that first, but the realization and the abiding and the living from it requires, it's kind of like a developmental stage. As you said, that I have, if people are interested in that Maslow, Scott Barry Kaufman, who was on my podcast, has written a couple books, and that's his area, is describing that next stage, and going back into the writings that weren't even published by Maslow about where he ended up in self-transcendence. So I like that because it isn't a belief system. This isn't a religion. This isn't even though meditators or contemplatives have done a lot of this research, to me they're like inner astronauts. They're using glasses and then microscope and then electron microscope. And when you look at electron microscope, you can look at a table or your body and the air, and you can't see a division because it's so subtle that there's just movement of molecules and electrons that are in the air and in your body or on the table. That's the subtle dimension, but the key is we're not living from that. The goal is not in this tradition to become a monk or to leave society or to be spiritually bypassed or to be, there's nobody here, everything is fine. Would you like this? What kind of tea would you like? All tea is the same. like to have I have no preferences. So it's really to be more juice. Have more freedom, to feel more love, more joy, more sense of less worry. So if you were to talk about, as you've worked with and I've worked with, people doing public speaking or doing other things like that, there's that fear of the group coming at you or judging you and your own self-judgment. So that social anxiety is like a part of you, and you can be with that part from this internal family systems. You just recognize that, there's a part of me that really is scared and worried and anxious. All right, where is that in your body? Okay, it's here. It's like here in my stomach. It's like this line. Okay, can you be aware of it and thank it for caring and realize it's a positive part? Now, can you unblend or ask for space so you can be aware of it and you can be with this and realize, there's a part. Now, is there another part of you that actually is really looking forward and excited in a positive way? Yes, where's that? That's like, like this little tingly thing here in my heart. And it's like, okay, so now who's aware of both those parts? Oh, well, I am. Okay, so from here, can you go and just, give your talk?
Love that example. Thank you for sharing that. That's obviously very relevant to this audience. I do want to give just a huge plug in this moment for your app and working with Loch. He's got an incredibly, I'm just going to speak about you in the third person for a moment. He's got an incredibly coherent system for waking up this form of presence or awareness or self, from an IFS point of view, self with the capital S. And go to his Mindful Glimpses app. There'll be a link in the show notes. There's 20% off for a year. I'd heartily recommend working with him in person. So on his website, lochkelly.org, or mindfulglimpses.com. Is that right?
I think so, yeah. I know lochkelly.org is good. And it has everything there. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. So lochkelly.org. and it has everything there. I've been on retreat at least 2 times, maybe three, I'm
Yep.
not sure, in Costa Rica, but I know he does retreats in the US and elsewhere.
Yeah.
He does online retreats as well. And the app itself is a concentrated form of many or all of the glimpses. And so you can do a huge consciousness journey of unwiring this problem-based self and getting a whole lot of space from that and waking up this kind of awareness that Locke's speaking about in the comfort of the app.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as you say, in terms of so it's a funny thing that kind of I recommend. I say, okay, now, since you're on your phone and you don't want to be on your phone and now you're doom scrolling, all right, end by going on your phone to my app, do a 1 minute to 5 minute glimpse, and then put down your phone. So as long as you're on it, and you're getting a little caught, remember that on your phone is a glimpse practice that can take you into another consciousness and transition you out of your being on your phone and back into your everyday life. So it's kind of a funny thing to have meditation app, especially on this level.
I really love that suggestion of just at the end of a horrific session of doom scrolling to do your penance, move across to mindful glimpses. And, as you have often said, small glimpses many times. The object with this work is to just many times a day drop into this kind of awareness through the glimpses, make it a habit, and as opposed to the effortful mindfulness of sitting on a cushion and kind of grappling with your mind and repetitive thoughts and intrusive thoughts and so on. You just go to the app, work with the glimpses, cut through the fog, because I think that's one of the feelings of this, is a sense of cutting through the fog and kind of waking up to, oh, I'm here. Okay, I'm here. Breaking through the endless narrative and then doing that a lot to train that as a new normal. I want to ask you, let's just say if we move this into a communication environment, being a human around other human beings, what does moving our awareness out of our habitual contractions, our habitual patterns, what does that look like when you start to bring this kind of awareness into relationships and communication?
Yes. Yeah. So, as you say, and as we kind of walk through this kind of meditation psychology work, there is a place for calming the body. There's a place for sitting quietly, closing your eyes, taking some breaths, being apart from the world and from activity that is traditional or deliberate mindfulness or conventional mindfulness. Then when you learn these glimpses, they can be done closed eyes, but most of them can be done open-eyed. And you can learn which ones you like, by using my app or something like that, and then make them their own. Then you train yourself to lead yourself through it. So that when you're in a social situation and you get triggered, you start to realize, I'm about to say something. Oh, wait a minute, that's a part of me that's triggered. Oh, let me just, as the person's still talking and you're about to say something, you start to realize, oh, wait a minute, okay, let me just thank that part for being protective. It just becomes kind of very quick. I'm talking it through, but it literally... Step back, open up, come back to your body, be aware of it, love that part, be open, curious about what the person is actually saying and what part they might be in. Now you can see they're really, have an agenda about wanting me to think this, or they feel like they're in a role that I have from my history that is triggering me. But they're not actually doing that. They're just being enthusiastic or, strongly opinionated. And I'm like, okay. So now let me respond, to them. Or if they are being, you say, well, you know what? I really let's talk about this later, because I'm gonna take a break, and I'll come back to you on that. So you have space to respond from, but the key is it's not a strategy of your ego. It literally, all of this is about, there is another dimension of being or presence that isn't a positive quality of your personality. It is the prior dimension of your mind and your identity that got contracted into this small identity. So rather than it being an altered state, we really have to start realizing we're walking around in an altered state. We're walking around in this mental small mini me, and we can dehypnotize from the trance of the ego and learn to return home to this being that we've always been, that's innocent and intelligent and naturally loving, but actually naturally courageous, can stand up and say, no, actually, no, I don't want to do that, and be very and person go like, oh, okay. And you're like, wow, that was pretty good. That came. So you start to feel that there's this shift of growing up to this new, already installed higher consciousness that isn't just a meditative strategy. It's literally the new level, like a baby. You're it still has you, the personality, nothing's gotten rid of, but you as a baby, you as a teenager, you as a young adult, and then you as this awakened being adult still have the personality stuff, but the view and the capacity is completely different.
Beautiful. Thank you, Loch. Yeah, I think that ultimately that's also in the work that I share, that is the objective, is to start to, or to begin with looking at the conditioned patterns we might have when we walk into a room, whether that's public speaking or with social anxiety, or just most of us in relationship will walk into a room, walk into a conversation carrying quite thick conditioning about how to be, including facial masks and patterns of conversation and patterns of fawning or whatever other behavior patterns we'll bring into the situation. And what you're suggesting, I think you might have used the word naturalness, is this sitting back into something more, I struggled to find the right words, not necessarily right. Spacious, but with capacity, presence, awareness that is almost prior to all of that conditioning.
Yeah.
And the conditioning exists within it, but we're not hypnotized by it. We're not looking at everyone else through all of that conditioning. It's a little bit like the conditioning is kind of somewhere down here operating. Yeah. It doesn't possess us. So then what are we looking through? I mean, it's a strange question, but
no.
Who or what are we then if we're not in that conditioning?
Yes. Yeah. So as we were talking about before, it's almost like, because our physical body, in order to survive, has to know its boundaries, its dimensions, and its sense of solidity, so that it knows when it bumps into something or something's coming at it, it needs to have this. So the little ego identity starts to think it is a solid thing with a body that actually is using this as a vehicle. So it's now no longer just identify with the body. It's like a little mini-me driver, going yeah, I'll use this body, I'll move it like this, and I'll do it like that. But I'm a solid, I have to be solid, and nobody can attack me, and I've got to, and then this mindful move, wait a minute, that's not solid. That's a pattern. Then we get subtler. So there is a dimension you have to become familiar and comfortable with more space. with a dimension of who we are that is here now, but but then the space is also includes the energy or the thought, feeling, sensation, emotion patterns and form and body. So now we're more in almost, we've moved from solid rock or physical animal only to sky, and now we come into almost like ocean and wave. So now we're an individual wave, but so are you. You're a wave, and everyone I'm talking to is a wave, and the things in the world is a wave in this ocean. There's a sky dimension, there's an earth dimension, but that now we get into flow. So now there's a dimension where I'm multidimensional. There's a physical body here. There's a personality that's happening. There's parts that keep trying to drive the vehicle, but the dimension of flow consciousness, which interestingly, this, in its traditional form, Csikszentmihalyi, who was the researcher who first did this flow consciousness, basically said there's these dimensions where when you're in flow, you're not using thought-based self-reference. You're in the now. Time either slows down or seems, if you're absorbed flow, it kind of, you look up, you've just done this amazing work and hours have passed. Or when you're in this panoramic flow, which I call it, everything slows down. Someone's talking, and you're like, okay, I know what I'm going to say. And it's optimally functioning. It's higher functioning, but it's not thought-based. It has a sense of connection to everyone and everything, to your environment. And there's a feeling of not self-referencing. So, most people have experienced this in things they love to do, sports, music. What if you could, so I have, one of the glimpses I do, it's called the memory door, where I say, well, go to that experience that you love, that you do in your free time, which is, why do you do what you do in your free time? It's actually to get into awake consciousness, to get into flow. But you don't even know what that is. You think it's about surfing or playing tennis or gardening or walking your dog or playing music. That's the door to you, not even the qualities that arise, which are fun and freedom and playfulness and joy. That's good, but it's the who you shifted into who, and through the door of music or whatever that is, to the qualities, but you're still focused on the thing, the person, place, or thing, or activity, or the qualities. But once you realize, wait a minute, it's because I'm this beingness that's interacting and has open-eyed active meditation is in the world. So what if you could, so the glimpse practices are reverse engineered. All right, let's go to the who and the what. Now let's bring it into activity. So if you're sitting on a subway in New York City and then see somebody and walk up the stairs and go to work, there's no difference than doing your favorite activity, because it's the who that is you.
I love that. And every time I think a question starts to arise, you start answering it before I get to utter it. So part of what you expressed there is also part of the promise of doing these micro efforts. What does it feel like to do this shift? What does it feel like to exist in this slightly different, evolved way? Well, very different, evolved way.
Yeah, I mean, it's a process, and it's getting comfortable and familiar with this new. So there's a unfolding. There's a growth over time, that the habit initially comes back quicker, and you get unconscious about it, and then you almost have a spontaneous awakening. The first spontaneous awakening is, oh, I'm caught. Oh, I'm in a part. Oh, I'm identified. Oh, I'm back. I'm being, contracted. Whatever that is, you almost have to find a language and for that felt sense of like identified, attached, shut down, triggered, whatever that is. And then, oh, and there's another way to be. So you remember that. Then you remember, oh, and I know the different types of glimpses or doorways or shifts that can take me out of this and into the other, and then also be with this that is worried or contracted or triggered. So, and then the fourth thing is, okay, so let's do it now. And then the next key is that what does it, and this is where people have gotten caught over forever, is what does it is the awareness. So the awareness unhooks and opens to know itself. So it steps back from the mind and the body, and then it looks at itself. So there's so many people, as you mentioned, that get caught in the difficulty concentrating, and there's a whole nother group who have been doing in this more non-dual practice, who am I? And even the guy who wrote the book on it, I just heard an interview with him, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm still doing it. Hopefully it'll work someday. And I'm like, what are you talking about? We keep trying. I'm not going to give up on it. So it's like, no, it's got to be 1, 2, 3. If it's not 1, 2, 3, not because you're a magician or you're advanced or something, but because the awareness is right here, and that's one potential doorway or shifting method. If that doesn't work, there's a lot of other ones you can try. It doesn't mean because Ramana Maharshi used that, it's the best or the only way. So the key is this awareness has to feel like it knows your body, and it feels like it knows itself. So that feeling of the letting go into not knowing has to be, you have to talk to the parts and say, look, we're not going to stop here at not knowing, and we're not going to stop here at disembodied, and we're not going to stop at dissociated. We're not going to go to dissociation or to spaced out or to, we're going to come back. Ken Wilber talks about transcend and include. So that is a beautiful, you're transcending and the awareness is transcending. So the movement is done, the awareness disidentifies and either steps back, like when we did that, what's here now and there's no problem. The problem solver relaxed, and then the awareness had to know itself. Or it comes forward. And the other way to do it is your awareness unhooks from thought, and then like a bubble of awareness, it can drop and feel your body from within. So it can feel your jaw from your jaw, feel your throat from your throat. It can drop into the subtlest dimension of your physical body, your energy body, your awareness body, then open and then include. But what has moved either way isn't me concentrating from here going there. It isn't pulling the observer back. It's this new, so this is what's the new thing brought from contemplative world that isn't on the philosophical or psychological methods of the West, is awareness can move. You don't have to move it. The awareness can move itself and find itself, return to itself, and then include everything. So that feeling that's so odd, because it's also, it has to be palpable even though it's invisible. In other words, you can feel the awareness of the space in the room and the awareness of itself, even though it's not with the five senses. There's kind of a feeling of clarity, openness, so these other kind of feelings, light, and then feel like the intention to be curious or include or be is no longer being done by the thinker. So that this well, we've just kind of discovered, this, which is, like so hard to describe. I'm trying to describe it, has to be experienced, but it's when like I'm not talking when I give a glimpse instruction, I'm not talking to you, the thinker, the personality, the will, the doer, or your attention. I'm talking to you, the already awake awareness. And I'm asking you, I'm saying, like, look, we already have this dimension. So you, not you. I'm talking to you. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to this. Can you let go of that, or can you unhook and feel like your awareness can move open out of the cloud to discover the space, and then to mingle with the already awake, spacious awareness that's always been here and has been waiting for you to return? But it isn't. The thing about it is, why don't people awaken? It's because the neutral awareness it's already here, and it kind of like, I'm already including everything. Like I'm not motivated for you to get it, which is the weird thing. But the heart's desire, when you have a taste, so that's what kind of motivates people. It's more like what is the ultimate final destination of what's called bodhicitta, or open-hearted awareness, or loving presence. That's like, oh my God, if this is really real and possible, what else am I going to do with my life? That's what I felt when I got this first glimpses. I was like, oh my God, this is so amazing. This is what I've been looking for and everything. I was, young enough to say, like, okay, I don't know how to proceed. I'm not going to join a monastery, but I'm gonna be curious and see how this all unfolds, and whether it's possible and whether it's real. And I wasn't a joiner. Didn't want to be in a cult. I didn't want to be in a, religion. I was just like, all right, I'm going to use the scientific method of internal, investigation without being too mental. Just try to let it show it. And eventually what it feels like, it shows itself to itself.
Yeah, that was a powerful little mini session there. I want to urge our listeners to actually start again, watch the whole thing, but don't try and process anything Loch is saying with your mind. So don't try and grok it. Oh, if I just get this next concept, I'll get it.
Yeah.
Let yourself just kind of imbibe it, let it flow across like water, because he's putting out a whole thing, but not at the level of the mind. As you say, this is not actually something that one can process and understand and get. It's more of a releasing into something that seemingly is so obvious. It's there already, but gets masked by our hypnotized focus on the mind. And he just put out kilowatts of lovely material there for the awareness to wake up. That was delicious. I did ask you a question,
Yes.
which I'd still love you to answer, which is,
Okay.
what is it like to live as this? How is it different now?
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to say, kind of give the map of how it is in terms of consciousness, how you get caught and learn to return. So it's not having met many people who have genuinely, kind of are in the unfolding. There's nobody who's done. There's nobody who's like just steady state, because it's not a state, because everything's changing and there's this dance of consciousness going on. So it's always kind of a dance. But the foundation of the trust and the knowing starts to become, shows up by itself without attempting to do it, and always has a little background, kind of almost what they call in Tibetan Buddhism, and they call it grandmother awareness. So it's almost like this loving presence, like you're okay, sweetheart. You're a little crazy. You got caught in something. It's okay. It's all right. Don't worry about it. You're not. It's not so bad. Just don't hurt yourself or anybody else. It's all right. Just keep from acting. You can, anything going on inside is okay. We'll handle that. But it's that almost that feeling of existential okayness, like everything's okay. And yet then almost like a feeling of like, okay, so then let's live this human life. Let's show up. Let's be engaged. So it's not this everything's okay, so I'm going to join a monastery, sit on a couch, it's like enthusiasm, interest, because there's almost like a fearlessness of to be with the social anxiety part, to be with the part that feels it gets triggered and hurt by people who are kind of similar to the ones who hurt us. That as we engage in the world, there's like, okay, here we go, let's go show up, and then there's a choice, like the choosing is happening. I could do this, or I could do that. I could do anything, but let's see. Okay, so I'm have to make a plan in 3 weeks in order to, let people know I could do this, I could do that. Okay, well, let's do this. And then you step through the door, and either way, it's okay. Now you have these other choices that are revealed. And, I'll just say, I mean, I don't kind of talk about myself so much, but like during COVID, I guess two things. One is that I had long COVID. So I had these kind of extreme symptoms for a little over 2 years, where I'd wake up in the morning and like my shoulders and legs, the nerve endings wouldn't fire. So I would be like, I couldn't even stand, and I couldn't breathe. I had to stop doing exercise. I had brain fog. I'd have blood pressure go up and down. I'd have energy drain. It'd be just like, okay, which, everyone has to some degree, like 4 o'clock in the afternoon or, late at night, but it would be just like a battery, just like, and then just like, this pain, so I had to be with this body, and I was like, I don't know if this will ever go away. And, did all the things of the had these great physicians and alternative health and throwing all these vitamins and, treatments in there. Nothing helped until they went away. But being with it, like the brain fog thing, was like, I can't remember what I'm supposed to be teaching about something, and so, all right, well, you better not operate from this mind, because the mind is, you better shift into the awareness. And then I just like, okay, and I just start talking, and I'd be like, well, whatever this guy's saying is pretty good, but I'm not sure what he's talking about. But it's just trusting that the awareness is happening and organizing from flow, and that it made me not be able to use the small self, and so it reinforced that and being more loving toward myself as I couldn't function. And my wife, would be like ready to go on a hike, and I'd go ahead, enjoy yourself, find a friend, I'll see you, or I'll go part way. And the other thing is, we just had, Paige, my wife, and I, just during those years of being like isolated we just had the best time. We just became so much more loving, and we had so much fun, and our relationship just grew, more beautiful, and we, had these talks and these laughing and playfulness, and being kind of thrown into isolation, it just actually made it better.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Hmm. So you've described this foundation of kind of fundamental okayness, a background hug from a kind of a
Mm,
grandmother awareness, which I think is a beautiful metaphor,
mm,
kind of holding us in our crazy and all our beauty, and
mm,
from that capacity, there's this potential to go out and engage with the world and contribute and really
mm,
live and live a
mm.
real human life. Um, what does it look like, or what might it look like if this happened at scale with lots and thousands and millions of humans? How would it be different from where we are at this precarious place right now? What do you hope for?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it would be beautiful. And, this is why I'm, one drop in the ocean at a time, just continuing to explore and, uh, try to offer and fine tune these tools of consciousness and learn from students about what works, what doesn't work, and offer and just then let it go. Because how fast or quickly, the 100th monkey, is the hope that there'll be some 100th monkey, because the volume of it, the slowness of, one person at a time, uh, 40 people during a retreat out of 80, really have a amazing experience and start to, and, then say, great, other people have fun, but then they're like, I got interested in something else, and something else happened, and what was it? What was it that was so good 5 years ago? That was I remember we had it was something I realized, but I can't remember. So it's it will hopefully unfold, and kind of all we can do is be true and have integrity, and try to find that loving presence that we are, and respond to ourself and our own parts and others in a way that starts to resonate. And developmentally, I think it is important to know that there's this next stage of human development, and to see if people can discover it, and spend the next time. There's not as much clarity and teaching on the once you have that initial awakening, how to live it and stabilize. So that's kind of where I'm focused. I'm my latest thing after developing the app and having these online and live retreats is I've been doing a training program for helping professionals. So I had 180 people in the first cohort from 19 different countries, to because I thought, well, helping professionals are engaging with so many people in a way that they're teaching, and they're all these different. There's 40 different helping professionals. It's not just therapists and coaches and meditation teachers, yoga teachers, ministers, body workers. Then they add this effortless mindfulness, and then hopefully it can, be passed on in a way that is different and resonant and particular to the helping professional and to the people who are learning it, so they can find their own way.
Right. So seeding it out that way is kind of
Yeah.
efficient. The app is efficient. I really just want to re-recommend the app for anyone
Yeah.
interested in this work. Just get stuck in. I think there's all the tools you need and all the glimpses you need to,
Yeah.
as Locke said, to stabilize. Well, first to wake up this experience
Mm.
of this type of awake awareness, you could call it, and then to learn how to stabilize it, to do the small glimpses many times, so that it eventually becomes a stable form of experience, and one lives outside of the hijacked narrative of one's mind, or less hijacked. And the promise is less reactivity, more space, a kind of a more loving awareness, greater capacity, and I think a kind of an effortless, natural spontaneity where one is incredibly human and emotions are felt and shared. But I would say there's the potential for a huge amount of human health in it. We still have to do the work of cleaning up our psychological parts and our reactivity and our trauma. All of that work still needs to be done. But this provides this kind of loving substrate, like a deep potential and clarity for engaging with life naturally and I think really beautifully. And so I'm so grateful for your work, Locke. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you, Jeremy. Yeah, it's beautifully said. Yeah.
Well, thank you for this time together.
Yeah.
I feel really blessed to have spent this time, and thank you for sharing your work. As I said earlier in the podcast, I've attended multiple retreats of Loch's, and part of what I came to do when I came to work with Loch, I literally used the word stabilize, and to really stabilize the experience of this call it awareness. And I think he offers the most coherent package you can possibly find for stabilizing in this. So I cannot recommend his work enough. And it's a deep blessing on the planet. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. Such a blessing to be with you and so much fun as always.